Hello friends. Today's session I'm going to highlight more about requirement engineering process. In the last session we have seen about the first phase of requirement engineering process, that is feasibility study. So in today's session we will discuss about the second phase, so that is requirement elicitation and analysis process. This process is also asked in examination of software engineering for BCA students as well as for engineering students and diploma students for 5 to 10 marks. So in this requirement elicitation and analysis process, we need to follow a cycle. So this cycle consists of 4 phases as per the diagram. So the first phase is about requirement discovery. Second is about requirement classification and organizing. Third is prioritization and negotiation of requirements. And fourth is requirement specification. All right. So once when you collect the information during the software development in the first phase, so the main thing that you carry out is feasibility study to check how much feasible your requirement is to go to the next phase. In the same way, after feasibility study, the next thing that you do is as per the requirement engineering process block diagram. So you can see that this is the block diagram. So we are seeing this second phase, that is requirement elicitation and analysis. Okay. Let us see now what is an elicitation process. Okay. So elicitation is all about discovering of information, or you can also take it as a collection of requirements. All right. So software engineers work with a range of system stakeholders to find out about the application domain. It means our software developers works with different types of users. Okay, they work with different types of stakeholders, that is users, to find out or to collect the different kind of information that is being associated with the software development. It will also help them to find out what services they need to provide to the customer, okay, in order to increase the performance of the software. So in short, requirement elicitation process is all about collection of information or discovering of information from different kinds of users, which will help them to finalize the hardware and software requirements of the system. Sometimes requirement, as I told you, elicitation, it is also called as discovery of requirements. All right. So let us see which are the different kinds of users from where we are going to collect the information. So those different kinds of users may be the technical staff workers. Yeah, it involves technical staff working with customers, right? So what it means? So it exactly means that sometimes some of the staff, technical staff of the software development team work or interact constantly with the customer to find about the application domain. So this application domain is nothing but our new software that has to be developed. So here in the requirement elicitation process, our working team may interact with customer oftenly to collect the information about the application. Not only the information, they also try to collect the services that they need to provide. The services may be nothing but all the operational constraints of the software. So that is related to the hardware and the software requirement of the new software, right? Secondly, it may also involve users, managers, engineers, those who are involved in maintenance, right? So in short, you can say that requirement can be collected, okay, by considering yourself as a team and then working with the customer simultaneously. You also need to collect the information from different users of the software. So users are nothing but the different kinds of stakeholders. So these are different kinds of stakeholders. See, I have given the definition here to make it clear what are stakeholders, right? So stakeholders, it refers to any person or group. So stakeholder may be an individual or a collection of people, those who are working in a under common domain who will be affected by the system directly or indirectly. It means these are the people, those who may invest in your software, so it may affect them directly or indirectly when the software gets affected, right? So end users, engineers, business managers, domain experts, all these peoples can also be called as a stakeholder. So in short, uh, about requirement engineering process, it is nothing but a process of collection of information. Okay, it is a process of collection of information to develop the new software. And from whom you are going to collect that information? You are going to collect that information from different stakeholders. All right, yeah. So after explaining that into 3 to 4 lines, you need to draw this diagram. And in this diagram, you have to explain the importance of each of the phase. So in examination, they may ask you explain the process of requirement discovery or explain the process of requirement elicitation. So they may ask you in this way, right? So here it itself tells us that requirement discovery is nothing but what? Collection of information, right? So here you are going to see how you are going to collect the information. Yeah, so you are also going to see what are the different ways. Okay, you are also going to see what are the different ways of collecting the information, right? So here you will see n number of different ways of collecting information. So it tells us how you are going to discover the information or how you are going to collect the information from different types of users and what are the different ways, okay, and what are the different ways of collecting the information. Okay, so this is all about the first phase, right? Then going to the second phase, that is requirement classification and organization. So here in the first phase, okay, so in this first phase, that is requirement discovery, you will collect a huge amount of information related to the software. In the second phase, you are going to classify or you are going to categorize that information and organize that properly, right? So here you will see how you are going to classify, on what basis you are going to categorize that collected information or requirement, and how you are going to organize that information so that this becomes a final set of information. So this is about the requirement classification and organization. All right. Now the third phase, okay, it is about requirement prioritization and negotiation. So in this phase you are going to finalize, okay. So what you are going to finalize exactly? So here you are going to prioritize, okay. So prioritize is nothing but what? You are going to, suppose if you have 100 lines of information, you are going to set a priority for each kind of information, that which information should be considered first, which information should be considered next. So you form an orderly way of that collected requirement so that the requirement is followed in order and the development also happens in order. So in requirement prioritization, what do? You try to prioritize the information. So next phase is about requirement specification. So here you are going to finalize the requirements so that this requirement is carried out, okay, and it is almost the final set of requirement, and so that you can go to the what I can say, the third phase of the software development. So this is the main block diagram which you need to draw when it comes to the requirement elicitation and analysis process. Okay, so now let us see about the detailed explanation, what explanation you need to include in your examination when a question is asked. This is one more definition, okay, of requirement elicitation. So it says that it is an iterative process. So you saw that diagram where iterations are carried out. So it is also an iterative process, okay. That's why it can be also represented as a spiral of activities. So iteration, if you remember spiral model, okay, it is also called as an iterative process. Why? Until and unless a final set of information is obtained, we need to repeat, okay, this requirement engineering process. All right. So these are the phases, that is discovery, classification and organization, negotiation and documentation. All right. Okay. So as I told you, we will see this in more detail. So let me highlight you, okay, to the more detailing. So first activity, as I told you, it is requirement discovery. I also explained you that this is all about interacting with the stakeholders to discover their requirements, isn't it? Domain requirements. So second phase is about classification and organization, that is classifying the information into different clusters. Prioritization and negotiation, that is prioritizing requirements and resolving the problems with the requirements, and then finally creating a documentation. All right, so this is about the phases. So here at the below you can see that in the notes I have explained in more details also. Okay, somewhere they say that collection of information is not so easy. Requirement collection sometimes, okay, it is a very difficult task. Why it is a difficult task? Because sometimes the customer don't know what they exactly want from the system. Sometimes the customer explains that in the natural language, which is a bit difficult to understand for the developer. Different types of customers explain their requirements in a different way. Some of the political references and all are also included. Hence it says that there are some difficulties that may arise. Okay, there are some difficulties that you may face, right, during the requirement elicitation process. That is because mainly you can see that it is difficult because the customer sometimes fails to provide us the correct information set. All right. Okay. So when it comes to examination point of view, so you need to explain these phases in more detail, right? So first phase, as I told you, which you need to explain is about requirement discovery. Okay. So in requirement discovery, what do? We require different kinds of information, right? So see here. So here, this is the process of gathering information, as I told you. How do you gather the information? By interacting with different kinds of users, right? So as I have already explained, so in the same way you have to write about the requirement discovery. That is the first phase of requirement elicitation and analysis. All right. Yeah. So in the second phase, before going to that, we will see one small example. Okay. So often I have told you about the ATM stakeholders. So in ATM stakeholders, you can see that these are the different, when I want to develop a software about ATM with biometrics. Suppose I want to update my software with thumb impression as a password. Then from whom I can collect the information for updating this new software. So there are some of the different kinds of customers are bank customers. I can interact with them by some interview process or by forming some questionnaires or Google Forms, and I can take suggestions from all these different kinds of stakeholders. So by taking suggestions from these stakeholders, I will get a lot of new ideas and lot of new requirements, lot of new expectations of the customer. Okay. Then representatives of other banks, bank managers, counter staff. So in this way you are going to interact with different kinds of people, right? So database administrators, security managers, marketing department, maintenance engineers of hardware and software, and banking regulators. So These are different kinds of customers with which you need to interact, okay, when you want to collect the information to develop that new software. So each of the customer will have different types of views, isn't it? Views are nothing but what? Each of the customer, that is this above what you saw. For each of them, each of these will give you different kinds of views. Okay. So those views may be under interactor type, interactor viewpoints. It means mm, people or other systems that interact directly with the system. Okay. In ATM, the customer and the account database are interactors. It means the people, those who interact directly with the system, they present this kind of view. For example, the customers and database people interacts directly with the ATM. So they will present their views, okay, in terms of their interaction. So those viewpoints are interactor viewpoints. Then we have indirect views. It means from these categories, that is these different kinds of users. When we want to collect information from these different kinds of users, bank customer, he is the customer who will interact directly with the bank. Bank managers also interact directly, representatives of other banks. So there are different kinds of users, those who have different kinds of views and requirements uh, when a new software is expected. So that is nothing but the viewpoint. Okay. So who are the indirect viewers here? So stakeholders who do not use the system but who influence the requirements. Okay. For example, management and security staff, right? So they do not use the system directly, but somewhere they are related to the system. So their views are indirect views. All right. Third is the domain views. Okay. So domain views are nothing but the constants that influence the requirements. It means standard of interbank communication. Domain views are nothing but the people, those who are handling the main servers of the ATM software. So these views are very, very important, right? So there are different views of different users when it comes to the requirement uh, discovery. So this is all. Still we are seeing the first page, that is requirement discovery. So in that requirement discovery, this is one example. Okay. So in this example, what I am telling different kinds of users. So all these are different kinds of users. Okay. So please go through these different kinds of users. All right. So by taking these different kinds of users, you will come to know their different views. So what are the views of different kinds of users? So that is nothing but the viewpoint. Okay. So from that given set of the viewpoint, okay, from that given set of viewpoint, what you have to do, you have to identify the main requirements. Okay. So providers and receivers, systems that interact directly, standards, sources such as functional and non-functional. Okay. So from that given set of viewpoints, you have to finalize the views. It means you have to finalize what exactly are the views that you are going to consider. All right. Okay. So these are the things which you can include, okay, when it comes to requirement discovery. There is one more example which is related to library. Okay. So here you can see that in this information, the main is all your software and it has three different users: direct, indirect users, interactors and domain. So indirect users of library are library manager, finance officer, article providers. These are indirectly related to the library system software. So who are going to interact with this software? The main users, one who are going to use the library and the library staff. Alright. So in that also you will see that under the users, okay, under users you have students, staff and external people. So under library staff you have system managers and catalogers. So domain is nothing but the people, those who are directly related to the development of this software. So they are user interface standards and classification system. So this is the basic structure of different kinds of viewpoints of different kinds of users. It means it overall. So this will tell you about different kinds of the users of library software. So depending on this different kinds of users of library software, we successfully obtain what are the different viewers. So we have indirect viewer, interactor, that is a direct viewer, and domain viewer. So these are the people who interact with the software indirectly. These are the people who interact with the software. These are indirectly, these are directly, and these are the main core of the software. Alright, so you can take ATM example, right? Or you can also take the library system example, right? You can take any one example, no need to write or no need to go in exam for both the kinds of examples, right? So you can go for any of the option in the examination. Either take a library example or you can also take the example of ATM uh, stakeholders, right? You can take any one example, right? Now I told you that in requirement discovery you also collect the information. So how do you collect that information? See once again. In requirement discovery you collect the information. Secondly, you collect the information from different stakeholders, right? So different stakeholders means different people, those who are related to the software. So who are the different stakeholders here? So we have for example, if you take ATM, these are the different users of ATM. Okay, these are the different users of ATM, and these different users have their different views. These different users have different views. Okay, isn't it? These different users have different views. So these are different types of views, or views of different types of viewers. So this is one more example of library software. So we also collect that information by a process of interviews. Okay, so how do you interview? Basically, you suppose if I want this ATM software, new software, so what I do, I go and meet all these stakeholders and I consider interview with all these people. So I can consider different types of interviews and I can collect the information from those different types of people. So there are two types of interviews, one is closed and one is open. Closed means what? There is a structured way of interviewing. Open means what? It depends. The questioning depends upon how the interviewee, okay, or the person whom you are interacting is responding. Those are called as open interviews. Okay, yeah. So you can include basic points, that is interview is one of the way of requirement discovery. Alright, are you getting that? So this is what way of collecting, way of discovering the information, way of discovering the information from user, right? Or stakeholders. So you saw that there are different kinds of stakeholders. So interviewing is one of the way of collecting the information. So there are two different ways of collecting or interviewing. That is, one is closed interviewing, another is open interview. So you can go to any of them, or you can also have a mix. Okay, sometimes a structured, sometimes unstructured interviews also, right? So sometimes we feel that interviews are not good for collecting all the information. Why? Because the person one who is going to conduct the interview, he will note down all the points, and again we have to sort those points according to the development requirements. Are you getting that? Okay, so we need effective interviewers, the person one who will conduct the interviews at a very good extent and according to the requirement which are needed for the development. Okay, so effective interviewers are the people, those who conduct a very useful kinds of interviews, right? Are you getting it? Okay, so what are the different points that are needed to be considered during the description? They should start with the starting situation. They should have a normal flow of questions. They should also discuss what can go wrong, what are the concurrent activities that can be carried out during the development. Okay, they should also try to find out the situations where they can stop or where they can continue, right? So these are the different scenarios that are considered during conducting the interview. All right. So this is one example in the notes which I have given for a library. Okay, so you can go through that. So in examination you don't need to write an example. This is just for your study purpose. This example is just for your study purpose. Okay, so you can just include the main points regarding the requirement engineering process is that what is a first phase in requirement elicitation. Just go for what is requirement discovery. Okay, when you want to explain about this diagram, just explain about these 3 points. Okay, so what are the 3 points that you are going to explain here is, first explain what is or explain about requirement discovery. Next you explain about the stakeholder example, that is ATM stakeholder example. Okay, that is the best one which I feel. Or you can also go for library example, you can take any. Okay, you can also go for library example. Anyone you can take. You can take that example. Then you tell about what is interview, right? You can also tell about the interviewing process. So you can go for interviewing process. Fine. So in this way you can explain about the first phase, that is requirement discovery. All right. Okay, so please go through all these 3 parts. So in that I had explained you in more detail about requirement discovery, which is the first phase of requirement elicitation and analysis process.